and welcome to Prairie Pulse. Joining us today is the president of the Theodore Roosevelt Medora Foundation, Randy Hudson-Buehler. Randy, thanks so much for joining us today.
Good to be here.
As we get started, tell the folks a little bit about yourself, your background, where you're originally from.
Sure. I'm from North Dakota. I was born in Mandan and didn't venture very far. I worked as a public accountant for several years before going to work in Medora. And this is my 25th year of working in Medora. You introduced me as the president. I have for a long time preferred chief popcorn seller because I do a little bit of that out in Medora.
Well, that's a fun part of the job.
It is a good job.
But so you've been there for a while, but how did you come to end up as the president?
Well, as I said,
or the chief popcorn seller.
I did work as a CPA, and the foundation was a new entity. Foundation is about 27 years old. And I had made a decision I was going to do something else. I had some nice job offers, but I was actually going to open a daycare center is what I was thinking about doing. But at the last moment, someone from the Theodore Roosevelt Medora Foundation was in our offices. I had the opportunity to meet the man who was my boss, Rod Jaden. And it was the poorest job offer I had been given, but I really liked the man. Had the honor of working with Rod for about 9 years before he passed away. And I was the financial officer for the foundation, but that just kind of meant you wore a lot of hats and got involved with personnel and operations. And when Rod passed away, I was given the opportunity to take his position and have been doing that for the last 16, 17 years now.
Okay. Well, for folks out there who may not really understand, what exactly is the Theodore Roosevelt Medora Foundation?
It's a great question. Around North Dakota, people are very familiar with Medora, and they're becoming familiar with the Medora Foundation. As a nonprofit organization, we're still a baby, at 27 years old. The foundation was created by Harold Schaefer in 1986. As he was selling his company, the Gold Seal Company, his passion had become Medora, and he was very aware that the buyer of his products company, Gold Seal Company, probably wouldn't have interest in Medora, North Dakota. So he was concerned that what had been developed in the previous 25 years in Medora would just go away. So he gifted all of the assets of what had been the Medora division to create this foundation, the Theodore Roosevelt Medora Foundation. And our whole purpose really is to showcase Medora and its history and play host to the visitors from not just from North Dakota, but from around the country and even the world. And that's what we've been doing for the last 27 years.
Okay. Well, let's come back to the foundation a little bit later on, maybe. Let's talk a little bit about, for again, folks who don't know, exactly when and how long was Theodore Roosevelt in the Badlands?
He was in the Badlands for parts of 4 years. His first trip was to hunt buffalo. Mm-hmm. And, pretty well known, but it's an interesting situation where how much time did he spend? It wasn't 4 consecutive years. He came on several different occasions and did spend significant blocks of time. But earlier someone was visiting and asking questions about what role did Theodore Roosevelt's being in Medora and in the Badlands have on his life, and I've kind of really appreciated Clay Jenkinson's research on this, because Theodore Roosevelt was a man of great accomplishments, but he was also a politician. So I think every 4th grader in North Dakota knows that he said he would never have been president had it not been for his time in North Dakota or Dakota. Now, he probably said things like that in lots of places, but this is the interesting thing. When he was not politicking, when he was in the private company of one U.S. Senator, I think it was Senator Hall from New Mexico, in the White House, nobody's around, he's not winning votes anywhere. I'll paraphrase this because I may not get it exactly right, but what he said to Senator Hall when they were having a conversation was, "Do you know what memory I would choose to keep if the alternative was forced upon me to have all the experiences of my life erased from my memory? I would choose one. It would be my time on the ranch in Dakota." Now that's a powerful statement. That's not a politician speaking. So clearly the time that he spent out here was really important. And if you think of the circumstances, at least 2 of them, one was a great adventure. We have a property in Medora, we call it the Hyde Home. It's one of the original buildings, and you can rent it as a guest. There's a map from the 1880s on the desk that the guests can sit at. And you look at this map, and it's developed, and then there's just a big white space on the map. It's the Badlands of North Dakota, because nothing had been there yet. And I'm sure that's why Roosevelt chose. He wanted to go to the uncharted part of the country. That was the first occasion. But the other occasion, if you recognize that his wife and his mother died on the same day, Valentine's Day, 1884, and he handed his newborn baby off to his sister, and he came, shortly thereafter to the Badlands. Clearly it was a time of healing. He could have ended up being a non-entity if he had not rebuilt himself and healed. So the time in Dakota was really important.
Well, it seems it was. Can you tell the folks a little bit about some of the papers and artifacts that you house?
We have a significant collection of both Native American and Theodore Roosevelt. I think it was in 1995. A man named Jim Wilkinson, who was originally from North Dakota and then ended up being in Hollywood, California, was a collector of Roosevelt books and North Dakota books. And in the newly remodeled and restored and expanded Rough Riders Hotel is a wonderful library. And there are books that are, the only way they're in the library, they are either books by Roosevelt, about Roosevelt, or about North Dakota, or by North Dakota. And at the time that it was gifted, Tweed Roosevelt, great-grandson of Theodore Roosevelt, actually was on our board of directors at the time, was quoted as saying, behind Harvard University, this was the second largest collection of Roosevelt books. So it's a very nice collection, and it will complement nicely the great work that Dickinson State University is doing in archiving a lot of things on Roosevelt.
Well, and that segues right into the next question. I understand that Dickinson State University is working on a digital library, and they have a center there, and you have some relationship, it sounds like, with them.
We do. We've had a great board of directors at the Medora Foundation, and one of our past board members was the First Lady of Dickinson State University, Deanna Vickers. And I would guess it's probably been 8 or 9 years ago, our historic committee from the Medora Foundation invited stakeholders like Dickinson State University and the Theodore Roosevelt National Park and various entities, North Dakota Cowboy Hall of Fame, and we started working on things. And in what happened was what exactly should. A university took the ball and ran with the Theodore Roosevelt Center idea. Again, Clay Jenkinson has really been the driving force for that, and they are digitizing all of the documents related to Theodore Roosevelt. I'm not exactly sure on the numbers, but at one point there were over 1 million pages of Roosevelt-related materials that have already been digitized from the Library of Congress, and I know that they have agreements with Harvard University. Their goal is to have all of them, and that this digital portal will be housed at Dickinson State University. And I think recently the legislature appropriated some money to help advance those kinds of things.
Well, and that's got to be a huge undertaking.
It is, and it's great for Medora. Western North Dakota has rich Roosevelt history, and to connect places like Dickinson State University, only a half hour from the national park, there'll be academic scholars and even just folks of curiosity, interest, tourists, who I think will enjoy both of those activities.
Randy, let's circle back around. You mentioned you have a governing board. Obviously, a lot of organizations like yours probably do. Can you tell us about that? And I think you have scholars, historians, and of course, people that just love North Dakota probably on your board.
I'm obviously biased. I think I've got the best board in the state. And that goes from day one. When Harold Schaefer created the foundation, it's a sizable board. It ranges from 17 to 23 persons over its history. And people who know their North Dakota history knew that Harold Schaefer was a conservative business person and very active in Republican politics. But he was very, very intentional in creating a foundation that was balanced. We've had past Democratic governors serve on our board, and a very balanced kind of a entity. And we've got people, one of the most highly regarded historians in the country, Doug Brinkley, who's a best-selling author, who's on our board. We've got good business leaders. We have people who are committed to Medora for whatever reason. And I think that if you ask lots of people, it's a common thing, that as you're driving across the state of North Dakota, across the beautiful prairies, but when you hit Painted Canyon and you hit the Badlands, it's so sudden and so dramatic, you fall in love with it. And for some reason, the people of North Dakota kind of adopt Medora as their little town. So we have people from all across the state, historians, people who have passion for Roosevelt, passion for the Badlands, passion for the Medora musical. And we've even had board members come because they were passionate about golf and helped us build a great golf course.
Well, and we'll get into that a little bit later on. But so how is the foundation funded now currently, and tell us about some of the people that are involved.
Okay. Currently, our chairman of the board is Ed Schaefer, former governor Ed Schaefer. Probably for the first, I would say, 10 years of the foundation, 15 years of the foundation's existence, Ed was involved with private business and government and such. Only in the last 10 or 12 years did he come to the board. We've had folks like Frank Larson from Valley City be our chair, the mayor of Dickinson, Dennis Johnson. That 23-person board is a volunteer board, non-compensated. They set the governance for the foundation, set the direction, 1, 3, 5-year plans. Over the years, the foundation has raised about $32 to $33 million in its existence from public support, individuals, businesses, primarily individual support. We're also very, very fortunate in that as an organization, we operate businesses. The Medora Musical, a lot of the activities in downtown Medora, including some lodging properties and retail shops and food service. So our annual budget is about $15 million, both on the expense and the revenue side, and we hope to raise each year $2.5 to $3 million in gifts. And so far, that's kind of been the way things have worked out.
Okay, $2.5 to $3 million in personal donations, it sounds like, and then the businesses part of it supports the rest of that. So how many employees do you have?
At the low point of the year, we were operating with about 43 full-time year-round employees. And for probably 8 months out of the year, we are running 80 to 100 total employees. But when we hit the peak of the summer season, we will have 325 to 335 employees. And during the course of the summer, there's a phenomena that happened 12, 13 years ago. We started a volunteer program. We will utilize nearly 600 people as volunteers in Medora. Today, there are probably here in May, when the season hasn't even started, I'm not sure, I think we probably have 25 or 30 volunteers in Medora who are helping us clean, paint, plant flowers, getting the town ready for the season. And that'll go on throughout the whole summer.
Yeah, so throughout the whole summer, you just more and more volunteer. Could you do it without volunteers?
That's I'm not sure we could anymore. When it started, it was an idea that there was a lady from Fargo, Jean Nessheim. I say she's the founder of our volunteer program. She was a wonderful friend. She ended up becoming a board member. And she just said, people will help if you ask. And the first couple seasons, we had maybe anywhere from 8 to 14 volunteers. After about 3 years, my wife, Lori Hudsonbuehler, took over that program. And within 3 years' time, she grew it to 1,000 people a year applying. And at that time, we could only utilize 400 or 500. So we had to tell 500 to 600 people a year, no, we don't have room for you. But we've managed to grow it. We've even built a facility called the Spirit of Work Lodge. The volunteers themselves built it, funded it, and it's a very nice facility where the volunteers come and spend 7 days with us, and then another crew come in.
Well, the season's getting started, we hope.
You can tell it is because I'm smiling.
Yeah, and biggest probably thing you have is the musical.
Yeah, that's our rock. For the Medora Foundation, the musical is the anchor activity. The national park it's equal or even greater because you have to have things, I call them attractors. We need attractions for things for people to do, but you have to have attractors. And in Medora, the two most significant attractors are the Theodore Roosevelt National Park and the Medora Musical. Somewhere between 600,000 and 700,000 people will visit the national park during the course of the 12 months. And our goal is we hope to have about 100,000 people see the Medora Musical. Over the years, this will be our 49th year, over 3 million people have seen the Medora Musical. Not a lot of events in North Dakota that can claim that.
Absolutely. But then what are your other attractions? You mentioned the golf course a couple of times, but that seems to be a good, is it attraction or tractor?
Well, for golfers, it's an attractor. When we built that golf course, it was named the #1 best new public golf course in the country by Golf Digest. And you can't get a better rating than that when you're a new course. But of course, you're not new anymore. So this year, maybe more importantly, Bully Pulpit was named one of the 100 best public courses in the country. That's a list that we are really proud of. So the golf course has really, it has attracted new people to Medora. I've said it this way for a long time. The last dollar of marketing we should spend is on a 15 to 45-year-old male to come to the Medora Musical. If they come, they love it and they come back. But you can hardly convince them if they've got a mindset that says, I'm not going to go to the musical. But when we built Bully Pulpit Golf Course, I hear this story almost every day. See somebody from Fargo or Jamestown or Bismarck that I haven't seen. Oh, it's good to see you. Well, yeah, my wife's been wanting to come to the show, and I said, sure, honey. And we play a round of golf during the day, and we're going to the show in the evening. So it's been a really good addition to the community.
Yeah. Your relationship with Dickinson State, I also understand they have an annual symposium at Dickinson State. Can you talk any about that and what that involves?
Yeah, it's a outstanding symposium. They bring national historians and authors each fall. This year, I think they're doing it, typically it's around Roosevelt's birthday, which is on October 27th. I don't have the dates off the top of my head, but I think it's a little earlier this year. It's usually a couple 3-day event. Clay Jenkinson has led that. Folks like Candace Millard, Douglas Brinkley, various authors, historians, Edmund Morris, who wrote The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt, a Pulitzer Prize winning book. Those are the kinds of folks that Dickinson State is bringing in for their annual symposium. And we've played a small role. In the early days, we were very much a partner with that. They always bring the group out to the Elkhorn Ranch as part of the symposium. And in part because DSU was doing such a great job, and we built a significant property a few years ago at the Rough Rider Hotel, we actually were able to bring the National Theodore Roosevelt Association to North Dakota 2 years ago as part of the symposium. So that's really gaining some national attention.
Okay. Well, you mentioned the Theodore Roosevelt National Park. Now, does the foundation have a direct relationship with that, or are they pretty separate entities?
At one point, and I believe this is still true, they're completely separate because the national park is a federal, run by the federal government. But we have a really good situation in Medora. You have private business, you have a nonprofit organization like ours, you have the State Historical Society, which operates the Chateau, a significant site in the state park system, and you have the federal government with the national park. When you say, are we connected? We literally are next door neighbors. I walk out the back door of my office, and if I walk 20 feet, I am in the national park. It's a good relationship. The park superintendent, Valerie Naylor, has been a good partner on a lot of things that we try to do. I think that Medora is in such an advantageous situation because our backyard literally is 70,000 acres that won't change. And that's something very valuable in Western North Dakota.
Sure, sure it is. Yeah, what do you think the continued fascination is with Theodore Roosevelt, for that matter in the state, but nationally and even globally?
Well, John, to answer that question, I referred to Harold Schaefer earlier. When he created the Medora Foundation, he was probably arguably one of the most recognizable people in the state of North Dakota. He could have created the Harold Schaefer Foundation. He could have created the Medora Foundation. He chose to create the Theodore Roosevelt Medora Foundation. And I've kind of come to say he was the smartest guy in the room, because Theodore Roosevelt's legacy is forever. And that, I think, Harold saw before any of us. He saw that Roosevelt's principles, his ideals, and his straightforward manner would almost always be relevant. And it's part of the reason we recently have taken our Theodore Roosevelt person on tour all over the country. Just finished a 10-day tour around the state of North Dakota with him. We did 27 events in 10 days. Joe Wiegand is his name. I met him at the White House when he was performing for the President and First Lady on the occasion of the 150th birthday of Theodore Roosevelt in 2008.
How do you, or how do scholars sort of reconcile his image, Theodore Roosevelt's image, as an East Coast aristocrat versus sort of that Rough Rider, North Dakota Badlands?
I don't think they actually reconcile it. I think they accepted that he was big. His personality was genuine in all facets. I mean, he's known as the readingest and the writingest president. That was part of his character. And his being a cowboy and his being a Rough Rider were genuine. So he's a really rare kind of character. Back to your previous question, that's why Harold was so smart, because we can go for a long time in Medora, North Dakota, providing kind of vignettes on Theodore Roosevelt's life. We can do that in downtown shows. We can change the Medora musical every year and introduce a different little snippet of Roosevelt's life and entertain people with it, because you don't reconcile it. You accept it that he was bigger than the rest of us.
What do you think Theodore Roosevelt would think of the oil exploration that's going on in our state?
Oh man, I wish I could have him sitting across the table and ask him that. I am sure, Roosevelt is known as the great conservationist. He also talked about what does conservation mean versus preservation. I just can't answer that. I think that there would be parts of it that he would have great concern about. But he would also say that a strong country needs to use its natural resources. And so I think he would push hard to make it be done responsibly. I think he would be really glad that there's a national park with his name that says these 70,000 acres aren't getting touched. Yeah. So, that's a great question. I wish he was alive to talk to him.
Yeah. Can you talk a bit about his life? I mean, I don't know how much history you really have on him, but his epic journey to South America, and then of course his failed presidency in 1912.
The failed presidency, the run in 1912, was probably a little easier for me to speak about, in that, we do presentations on Roosevelt, and it's really interesting that he says one of the real regrets of his life was when he was elected in 1908. That he said he would not run, or I'm sorry, he came to office in 1901, but after that, when he was elected, he said he would not run again, and that he would view his 7 years as 2 full terms. And his wife said that was a mistake, and it obviously was. So, he skipped one cycle and then came back and ran in 1912, and he did quite well as an independent in creating the Progressive Bull Moose Party, but came up short. And that's one of the things I think people find fascinating when they come to Medora and learn little things about Roosevelt. Even though he was defeated, people are shocked to know that he was shot during that campaign. On October 14th, he took a bullet and then gave a speech for 80 minutes with a bullet in his chest. And the undergarment that he wore with the bullet hole is on display in Medora, North Dakota, at the Theodore Roosevelt National Park Interpretive Center. So, in many ways, he he probably failed as the election, but had a lot of victories in the battle there.
Well, there's a lot more information I'd like to talk about, but what are your goals? What are the plans for the foundation in the future?
Well, our vision statement, I think, is the simplest. Our vision is to connect people to historic Medora for positive, life-changing experiences. And that's a really grandiose vision for an organization that looks like a tourism organization. But we do that with 300 young people every year. We have people working for us from 18 different countries, rich experiences, the volunteers. And we just want to keep doing that. And if you and I visited 5 years from now or 10 years from now and people said, man, Medora's grown, but at the same time they say, and it's still really great. You kept the important elements the same. I would say we've done it right.
Randy, we've run out of time, but I know people can go to Medora or go to your website and find out more. So thanks for joining us today.
Have them call 1-800-MEDORA-1.
All right. Well, that's all we have on Prairie Post this week. And as always, thanks for watching.